Hi students, welcome back. Welcome to my lecture on thesis. In the previous lecture, as part A, we discussed about basics of thesis writing, wherein I concentrated on meaning and planning of research. In this lecture, as part B, I'll be talking about now contents, writing, and I'll also touch upon some of the guidelines which are generally laid out by a particular university. So what are the major contents of a thesis? So usually there will be a cover page which is based on the guidelines of a particular university, and there are few preliminary pages wherein we will write about now I will acknowledge the people who helped you, and also certificate and few other things will be there, like titles of table, figure, and other things. And series of chapters actually starts, like introduction, review of literature, material and methods, experimental results, discussion, summary, references, and appendix. In some universities, it is recommended to combine experimental results and discussion. So otherwise, so in most of the universities, the structure actually follows in the same format which I have given here. So I was talking about cover page. You can see here the cover page recommended by a university varies. So for example, in our university, Kaladishwapanaika University of Agricultural and Horticultural Sciences, you can see the wrapper. Okay, so blue wrapper, and otherwise the contents is more or less similar: title, the researcher, the student name, and the department for which you are submitting the thesis, and the university name. So whereas UAS Bangalore, you can see the wrapper color actually changes. Whereas we have another the cover page submitted in a traditional university like University of Calicut, it actually changes. So otherwise, it follows more or less same content: the titles, and the student name, or the department to which it is submitted, and also to the university which will submit the thesis. So coming to the thesis title, so it's a very important thing. It should be very attractive. Okay, so it should reflect the contents of a thesis, and it should not be very long. It should be very concise, precise, and informative. So as soon as the people the persons concerned, the interested students, if anybody wants to study the entire thesis, so it's actually based on title. Okay, so title should be very attractive and very small and very precise. Say I have one or two examples here. Physico-chemical properties of acid soils of Karnataka. Okay, very small, but involves a lot of studies, right? So generally, title should be between 5 and 15 words. So although there is no hard and fast rule, so it should be very small, like 5 and 15 words. It should not be too long, right? So otherwise, readers may lose interest whenever they start reading your title. So and it should be very specific and accurate. So we need to avoid phrases such as a study of, an investigation of. So for example, thesis itself is a study, right? So it's an investigation. So you need not to tell that. So it's a study of, an investigation of. So it actually loses interest among the readers. So avoid jargon and acronym. So it should not be too lengthy, I was telling you. So you should not use acronym, for example, abbreviations. Okay, so because you are writing for a larger audience, your abbreviations may not be known to all the people. Okay, use impressive words. So it should be eye catchy. So like this here, you see, there is a title here just for a example purpose I have taken. Study on seasonal incidence of insect pest complex of tomato and their management with phytoextracts. So is there any possibility to give alternate title? Okay, as beginners, what needs to be done is that, so you can choose 4 or 5 different titles, and you can select the best title, or you can discuss with the the fellow colleagues or the your advisory committee, and then choose the best one. Okay, so there is one more title here. We study the performance of pulse drip irrigation in organic agriculture for potato crop in sandy soil. So it looks somewhat complex. So is there any possibility to give a more attractive title, and it's very concise? Okay, so like that, beginners has to identify any alternative titles we can think of. When they read that thesis title or the titles of the research paper, so they can write their own title, so that they can choose or they can discuss with the people, and then so come to a conclusion that this is the best title. Okay, so it should be informative, as I was telling. So it should not be too complex. So here I have one more identification of physical and chemical properties of acid soils of Karnataka. So is there any? No, like I was telling, no, you need not to tell that physico-chemical properties of acid soils of Karnataka, right? So you are telling in a simple sentence. So here there is one more aphid vectors of papaya spot virus and their management. So simple and precise. If you want to make it complex, so if you want to give more information within the title, a study on the aphid vectors transmitting papaya spot virus and their management using various strategies. Okay, so a study I told as in the beginning of the title discussion, you need to avoid such dead words. So aphid vectors transmitting papaya ring spot virus and their management is enough. Okay, so in the methodology or in the object, you can tell where actually you are concentrating when it comes to management. So you can avoid using various strategies. Okay, so like that, so you can give a concise title. So the first chapter is actually introduction. So three components are involved here. So this chapter should be a small content which can be written in 1 or 2 pages. Okay, so sometimes it may be extended for 3 days, not like 3 pages. Not like 5 pages, 10 pages. So it should be very concise again. So the introduction should be a description of general problem. Okay, so you will actually give a background and you will identify the problems associated with that, and followed by a statement of the specific problem, the interested problem, okay, you are trying to answer. And then you may also include motivation for the study. So what are the major gaps which has been identified through review of literature? So what is that major gap? So in that, or you may identify a number of gaps. And among those gaps, which gap you are trying to fulfill in your study, in your thesis, in your research. So that's what actually brought in introduction. So what to write in the introduction? So the important points are, what do we know about the topic? So it actually comes with literature survey. So when you collect a lot of literature, analyze that literature and study them, so then you will identify what has been done so far. So provide comprehensive and critical review of the major findings in the area. So what has been done? What are the major outcomes with respect to the topic of interest or your topic? What we don't know, what is that gap? So identify what the gaps in the current understanding and why it is important that these gaps to be closed. Right? Say, for example, in agriculture. So people are trying to increase the yield. So what has been done to increase the yield? So if we identify those gaps, okay, you can increase the yield further. Right? So those identifying those gaps are important. That actually comes with the analysis of literature. So what the research publications so far published around the world. So what we are now showing, so a clear statement what you are aiming to address the scientific problem. So what are the objectives through which you are trying to address that problem? So writing a good introduction. So what we will do, actually we will connect the problem statement to the objective, right? So here you see the influence of aphid vectors. I'm giving an example, especially Apis gossypii, on the epidemiology of potato virus has yet to be studied in great detail. Therefore, the specific objective of the present study. Okay, so you are telling what has been done, what is the gap, and what you are actually going to do. Say objectives are to investigate the, so you can do whatever. So to quantify the, to characterize the. So now I'm giving the way you can start the objective title. So, but you can modify depending on your requirement. So, but it is a general way of giving the objective titles. So when to write the introduction, this is more important. So you can't write a good introduction until you know what the body of the thesis says, right? Very important. So when you write all the parts of the thesis, okay, and then we'll be knowing what actually the introduction should contain. So consider writing the introductory section after you have completed the rest of the thesis rather than before. So very importantly, this is the chapter to be written last. Okay, so although it is the first chapter, this should be written at the end. Okay, so this is the important point to be remembered. The next chapter, review of literature. Okay, so what is the literature review? So I was telling that when you are start writing the introduction and identifying the objective, you should know what has been done. So it actually based on the literature review. Okay, so literature review is nothing but a systematic method for identifying, evaluating, and interpreting the work produced by previous researchers, scholars, and practitioners. So what you will do, you will actually search the literatures, see the publications, see the research papers or thesis published elsewhere, and you start reading that, you start studying that and what has been done. So you'll identify, you will evaluate and interpret so what has been done so far, and this actually gives a clue for identifying the gaps. So this is the most important chapter. So literature reviews an interpretation and synthesis of published work. Okay, so you need to interpret, you need to synthesize. So you will actually spend a lot of time in identifying the topic, identifying what has been done so far. So in a short words, actually I want to make a statement so that this will give a more importance to this chapter, literature review. So here it has been said, filtering and sorting essential and interpreting from the bulk. Okay, so you can see here. So you have for example, on a particular topic, you may get thousands of research papers. Not all 1,000 papers may not be interesting. So maybe out of 1,000, 100 may be of interesting. Out of that 100, so 50 may be very important for you. So they are actually the essential research papers, which will be useful for identifying the gaps of research and focus on your research. So this is very much important chapter. So, and we say that many times, we'll just Google it out and just download a lot of research papers and we'll just copy and paste those contents in the literature review. So that should not be. So we need to you can download and read as many research papers as possible. Okay, so you need to analyze that, what actually it contains. So you need to select, differentiate, break up, and give the boundaries. Okay, so can we collect the literature from 100 years or 50 years? So what actually they have said about that? So we need to synthesize that information. Okay, we need to reorganize that information into different headings, subheadings. So in a research paper, this has been done. So in another research paper, this aspect has been worked out. Okay, so we need to comprehend that. We need to understand that. So and then you can make a quick note of all the contents in a different subheadings. So based on that, actually, you will identify the gaps. Okay, so that actually gives scope for future experimentation. That's why this chapter is actually very much important chapter. So scope and length of literature review. So be selective. So you should not be too lengthy. Again, state the current state of theory. So what is the present knowledge? So far back, for example, if you're a master student, so take the literature review for about 10 years. So there is no hard and fast rule. Again, I'm telling. So this will actually, why I'm telling this is that, so since last 10 years, what has been done? So what is our focus? Okay, it doesn't mean that you need not to go back and search the literature which are older. Okay, so depending on your requirement, so maybe you can extend review of maybe 30 or 40-year-old. So avoid verbosity. You need not to write too lengthy review and just know what has been done in the what has been said in that research paper should not be just copied and pasted. Okay, we may also end up with a plagiarism. So you need to rephrase. You need to identify, synthesize that information and select the best contents from a research paper. So demonstrate the ability to synthesize the body of literature. So brief but focused. Okay, so when you read that, so you'll actually synthesize that information, and so entire research paper, which is maybe 4 or 5 pages, has to be reduced in 3 or 4 sentences. So that is the way you actually need to demonstrate your capabilities when you collect, read, and synthesize the literature. So this is the chapter to be written first. Okay, so when you have a thorough idea of what has been done so far, you can think of planning experiments. So this is the this is the chapter to be written first. So the next chapter is material and methods. So very important chapter. So what are the materials used? What is the methodology you followed? Okay, when you are conducting the experiments. Okay, so provide detailed methodology used to conduct the experiment. So it should be it's a which equipment used. Okay, so what is the timing? Okay, for example, when you are conducting the experiment, what is the time given for observations? Okay, so all that provide sufficient details, procedure, but it is not expected to be written like a laboratory manual. Okay, it should not be too lengthy. So as much as possible, you should tell in a pass on that information in a minimum sentences. Highlight critical steps or precautions to be taken so that the future workers will not make that mistake. What belongs in the method section? So description of your materials, procedures, theories, okay, information to allow readers to assess the believability of your results. Okay, so when people read that, so whether the contents can be believable for the future researchers. So you cannot tell extraordinary which has not been known to exist. Information needed by another researcher to replicate your experiment. So there should be a reproducibility. When others did similar type of experimentation, they should also get same type of results. Okay, so that when you clearly mention the methodology, so it becomes very easy for others to follow that, replicate the same type of experiment. So calculations, techniques, procedure, equipment, so calibration plots, so all that has to be mentioned. So limitations, assumption, range of validity. So what are the limitations? Right. So if you identify that, others will not repeat that mistake. So description of your analytical methods, including references to any specialized statistical software. Okay. So what is that particular technique you used? So whether it is actually based on the previous researchers. So all that has to be mentioned. So like, that has to be the previous researcher work has to be mentioned with just citation, just quote that references. You need reference. You need not to rewrite the entire procedure which has been said in another research paper. Okay, so it only increases the number of pages. So this is the chapter to be written after literature review. That means this is the second chapter to be written after the review of literature. The next chapter is the experimental results, the fourth chapter. So in which we need to present the findings of the study in the order of specific problem as stated in the statement of the problem. That means, so we need to address objective wise. So what is there? Now in each of the objectives, you may have conducted so many experiments. So that has to be represented subtitle wise. Okay, each of those subtitles. So what are the results obtained? So that has to be linked with the tables or figures. Okay, so break up your results into logical segments by using subheadings. So present the data in the form of textual, tabular, photographs, or graphical. Okay, so of course, each of the tables photograph will be explained in a text format. So you need not to give the same data in the table form or in the graphical form. Either one is enough. So mention the negative results as well, not just positive results, but also negative results. Okay, so when you give the negative results, so that actually increases the confidence level of readers. Okay, so that increases the believability of your results. So do not interpret the results, save that for discussion. You need not to say why this trend, why this increase in the yield or whatever. Okay, so that all that has to be kept for discussion section. So you in the result section, you will just say what is the trend, what is the results you obtained. So yeah, I was telling that data representation, graph or table. So any one is enough. Okay, you need not to give the both away. Okay, and the table should be self-explanatory. So many of the things has to be represented in the footnote. Say for example, I'll go to simple example in the data, something like 11.38. Okay, whether it is minimum millimeter or centimeter, okay, or feet. Okay, so it should be self-explanatory. They need not to go and read the thesis content. So in order to understand the data. Okay, so that has to be self-explanatory. So figures or photographs or drawings are better for conveying trends or proportions. Okay, so textual description should be summarized and highlight the table content. So all statistical analysis where appropriate should be described. So what is that procedure you followed? So experimental, so the common pitfalls. Okay, so common mistakes done by the students. The same data are presented in figure and table. Okay, so it only increases the pages, and of course, when you generally the thesis content will be utilized for research paper publication. During that time, the journals will not accept both tables and figures. So either you have to restrict figure format or table format. So data represented in table are simply stated, so that you will not try to address why this trend. You are not attempt to make comparison. So highlight the anomalies. Okay, so you have to like thread by thread. Okay, you should try to address why this data actually, right? So what is the data exactly means? Okay, so that has to be brought in. So unusual trend in the data is ignored. Okay, so only you should not give importance to something which is useful to present a context. Okay, so what probably led to is a variation, right? So that variation has to be mentioned, and that has to be discussed now in the next section, the discussion section. Okay, so the next chapter is discussion. So what emphasis to be given in this chapter? So this chapter is actually very much important. This actually help you to demonstrate your capabilities of synthesizing or analyzing the results you obtained. So to communicate the significance of your findings. Okay, in the previous chapter, you will just say, so what is the data? Here you will say why this data actually, why or how are reasons for obtaining this type of results. That will actually brought in here to indicate how they support or refute the experimental hypothesis. Okay, so interpretation to describe how these results advance the field of study. Okay, so in each of the experiment, you will say the reasons for obtaining this type of results. You will actually link that with previous publications. How thorough is your discussion and interpretation? So you have the main point to emerge from the results being picked for discussion. What are the important things that has been really picked, discussed? Are there links made to the literature? This is very much important. So whatever the results you obtained, so that has to be linked with the previous literature. So in this where the second chapter, the review of literature is very much important. So why these results have obtained? So what are the probably other people have also conducted this type of experimentation. So what is the results obtained in their experiment? What is the results obtained in your experiments? Okay, are there speculations? Are they well grounded? You cannot simply conclude based on your assumption. Okay, so it should be linked to the previous research and say, so probably the results obtained is because of this type of thing. So that has to be brought in. So should not repeat results again. So these are common pitfall. So same thing will be picked from the result section and then one or two sentences added. So that should be avoided. So it should be a mix of your points, results, and literature review. So that's what the discussion means. So should answer the following questions and caveats. So discussion should contain what are the major patterns in the observation? Is there any spatial variations, temporal variations? Okay. What are the relationships, trends, generalizations among the results? Is there any agreement or disagreement with the previous work? Okay, why that variation? Include the evidence or line of reasoning supporting each interpretation. Again, I'm telling it is not based on assumption. Okay, so it should be well-grounded. Now, a sentence which is based on the previous publication. The next chapter is summary. Okay, so again, summary is again short chapter wherein you will actually trying to summarize the whole content of your thesis. What is the strongest and most important statement that you can make from your observation? Okay, so results will actually bringing a lot of information. Here, the most important points, the strongest information. Okay, so if the reader actually wants to know what has been said, what has been written in the thesis, if they refer summary, they should be able to understand. Okay, so what are the practical implications of your work? If you met a reader or a friend at a meeting 6 months from now, what do you want them to remember your thesis? Okay, for example, you will present, a defense colloquium wherein a friend has attended. When you meet him after 6 months, he should be able to tell that, so yeah, I remember that important outcome of your thesis. Okay, so that those things has to be brought in in a summary. So writing another very important thing. So most universities actually have a guideline to write an abstract, which usually put in the beginning of your thesis or at the end of the thesis. Okay, so it is like abstract, which is generally found in a research paper. So the research paper contains it starts with title, and below that there will be author affiliations. Below that abstract will be there. So in order to write that abstract in a research publication, so you should practice how to write this abstract. So you know when you write a thesis, okay, so you'll know the entire body of the thesis. That has to be brought into a concise form of around 250 or 300 words, depending on the guidelines recommended by the university. Okay, so you will demonstrate your capability of putting that entire thesis into a concise form. That is the abstract. So wherein you will identify the major objectives and conclusions, identify the phrases with keywords in the method section. So you partly will mention the methodology followed, the major important methodology, identify the major results and discussions or the result section. Okay, assemble the above information into a single paragraph. Okay, so all thesis has to be brought in a single paragraph about 250 or 300 words. So that is the abstract. Okay, so of course, so when you read a lot of research paper and try to write the abstract for that others research paper, definitely this will be really helpful to come out with a good abstract. So in the abstract, check to see if it meets the guidelines. So as I was telling, each universities have got their own guidelines. Okay, so that has to fit in. Your abstract should fit into that guidelines. So make sure no grammar or spelling errors. Okay, many times the articles are removed in order to reduce the number of words. So that should not be. Grammatically, it should be perfect. Give the abstract to a colleague. Preferably one is not familiar with your work. Okay, and ask him or her whether it makes sense, whether it really represents your thesis, whether it is really grammatically perfect, or it is actually able to convey that information. Okay, so that is the abstract. The next chapter is reference. Okay, so of course, whatever the literatures which are used in any of the chapters, starting from introduction to in the discussion. Okay, so you need to include those references in this chapter in a particular format. So each university actually recommends a particular format to be followed. So that format has to be used when you are writing the reference. Okay, so even for example, when you are quoting the references in review of literature or in the metal methods or in the discussion or in any other chapter, for example, you need to write in a different way. Okay, so when you read the research papers or the previously published pieces, you will actually understand the ways through which you can write the references. For example, according to ACE 1994. Okay, so we'll put the year in the bracket. But the same thing when you are quoting a reference for a particular sentence. So here you see population growth is one of the greatest environmental concern facing future generation. That has been said, for example, by ACE. Okay, so we'll quote in this way. Okay, so when there are two authors, like this Simpson and ACE 1994 or Simpson and ACE, comma 1994, like that. Okay, so or when there are more than double authors, so you'll usually put it associates et al. Okay, so like that. So in this way, you need to write. So of course, when you read a lot of research papers, you will understand this. So and we list the references in the reference section. Actually, you need to follow alphabetical order. Actually, if you give that in a computer, this will actually helps you out. And again, you need to follow university guidelines. For example, here I have quoted one example. Now you see the authors here and the title, and the journal is generally abbreviated, International Journal of Agricultural Science. So where you will get this abbreviation is that, so there is a world list of periodicals. Okay, so after that, if you mail me, so I will share that world list of periodicals where, so for each of the terms, okay, which of the words, so there is an abbreviation, so which you can use. For example, Journal of Experimental Biology. So that has to be abbreviated like this. Okay, so all that of course, in a research paper, for example, so many of the research papers ask you to write the complete title of that journal. So, but many of the journals and the many of the universities have guidelines to abbreviate the journal's name, says result. So you need to follow that procedure. So the last chapter is appendix or appendices when you have more than one number of additional data which you will provide. So any additional data supporting information has to be given in appendix so that you will not add those contents in the methodology or in the result section. So supporting information can be given in the appendix. Okay, so you can follow read a lot of books written on the thesis. So that may help you to produce a good quality thesis. Say, for example, I am here quoting Guide to the Successful Thesis and Dissertation by March and Namgi Park. So similarly, winning the thesis, writing the winning thesis or dissertation. So of course, we have plenty of such books written because in any university, for example, if you are registered for master's or PhD, it is part of you to conduct research and submit to a university. Okay, so there are a lot of awards assigned by various agencies for best thesis. Of course, even if you are not worried about awards. Okay, when you write research papers, so simply many times you can take things which you have written in thesis and format to a particular journal and submit. So it saves your time. Okay, and of course, when you spend a lot of time conducting research and writing the thesis, it will be really helpful you to progress in your career. So that's where thesis writing is actually very important component in anybody's any scientist's life. So this is very important thing. So if you want to put entire thesis in one line, okay, two things are actually counted: integrity and objectivity. So you see here, you cannot conduct plan your research based on your will. You should know your stakeholders, whether the research is really beneficial to the society. Okay, and when you are giving some information to the science, okay, your integrity counts. Okay, you should not just simply based on some assumptions. You should not tell a lie. Okay, so that's where thesis actually contributes a lot to the science. Okay, so that's where the thesis is actually very much important. So, and you should conduct a objective based or a focused research so that some outcome actually will be out, and that will be very helpful to the society. So now I want to put a I want to give a more importance to a thesis. So that's why I'm making a statement. If you know what was we were doing, it would not be called research, would it be? So we should not know. We'll not be knowing what actually we are trying to identify. What will be the results? Okay, so now hypothesis based. You need to set an hypothesis and try to accept that hypothesis or reject the hypothesis. So that should be your focus. So research is what I am doing when I don't know what I am doing. So research is what I am doing when I don't know what I am doing. Okay, so that is the thesis. So thank you very much. So if there are any questions, you can email me or you can post below. So if any information is needed, I will be very happy to share you. So thank you very much.